Good day everyone, CRUCIAN Mahogany here and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about a case that may be sensitive. Viewer discretion is advised. Today we're going to be talking about the case of Dagmar Overbye or Overbye. Dagmar was born in a small village on April 23rd in 1887. This small village was called 𝐼𝐸𝐴𝐸𝐴𝐸𝐴𝐸 near our house. This is in the Netherlands. She was born to parents Sean and Anne-Marie Overbye, and they were poor farmers. Dagmar was a moody and melancholic child, and she was less interested in study at school and more interested in teaching whatever she could. When she was 12 years old, she was caught thieving her neighbor's purse. Can you imagine? Of course, after that, her parents sent her to work for another family of farmers in an area called Funen. They must have thought that working for somebody else or living with someone else would help to teach her some structure, because farmer 𝐜𝐥𝐢𝐜𝐥 was a hard taskmaster, and just for $10 a month, Dagmar was instructed to clean the house, wash the clothes, cook, and milk the cows. After a while, she must have gotten very upset with that because she did not enjoy doing work at all, and she left to work as a servant in several other houses or homes on the island of Funen. But soon she was up to her old tricks. She ended up spending 10 days in a woman's prison in Svendborg for thieving. When she was released, she returned to our house, and where after a short time she got a job as a waitress and fell in love with one of the customers at this job. His name was Biscard. They moved in together and they had a son. But shortly afterwards, the couple split up. And when they split up, the son mysteriously passed away. He died of mysterious circumstances. No one knows how he died. When a doctor held an inquest on the death of this child, of this son, he observed that the infant had blue lips, which to him was an indication that the child could have been choked. In the end, he decided to conclude that the child died of pneumonia. But for those who knew Dagmar and her checkered past, they were not convinced, and Dagmar moved on with her life. In 1912, she met and fell in love with another man named Jens Sorensen Fine, also called the clogsman. You know them clogs? I had a teacher that used to wear clogs. He was the only one I've ever known, and I was in elementary school. He would walk around in his clogs. You'd hear him coming down the hallway. But anyway, I digress. He didn't know at the time, but when he met Dagmar, she was already pregnant with another man's child. Dagmar ended up giving birth to a little girl, and her name was called Irena Marie Overbye. But because of the way times were then, Dagmar put Irena up for adoption because she did not want to further embarrass Jens. To have a child with someone other than the man she's with, a disgrace at that time. A year later, Dagmar was again pregnant. Now Jens, who obviously at that moment or at any moment with Dagmar did not want a child, he argued with her to abort the child. Dagmar refused. She said, no, I'm gonna have this child. By hook or by crook, I'm gonna have this child. But when the baby boy was born, Dagmar left this child in a haystack, and Jens refused to marry her. And when he refused to marry her, she attempted to take her life. Well, Dagmar moved on, and 3 years after she had given up her daughter for adoption, she went back to go get Irena. And she set off to Copenhagen to find a new life for her and her daughter. It was supposed to be a new beginning, but alas, it was not a happy one for neither herself nor her daughter. She opened up a sweet shop on the Homebladsgade on Amager in 1915. Here she met a gentleman by the name of Svensson, and the three of them moved into an apartment together on Jagersborggade 43 in Nørrebro. When the sweet shop failed, Dagmar began working as a professional child caretaker, or at that time it was called baby farming. Baby farming was a practice of accepting children for a small adoption fee whose parents were unable to keep them or unable to care for them. And this adoption fee was intended to provide food and other necessities for the child until they could be adopted by new families. In Denmark at that time, New mothers and young mothers who were unmarried had no choice when it came to unwanted pregnancies. It was illegal to have abortions, and young mothers who were unable to afford children, having them out of wedlock, having them out of adultery or rape, needed an alternative. In this case, they were reduced to selling their children in hopes of giving them a better life. So people realized, with this being the situation, a lot of money could be made, especially if the child left their care early, either by being speedily adopted or, as in was most often the case, by death. Unfortunately for the hopeful biological parents of these children, Dagmar was not finding good homes for them. She was murdering them in cold blood. It all came about following an article that she read in the newspaper, in a local newspaper, about a family who had been given 500 crowns to adopt a baby. As a result of seeing that article, she decided, let me set up a sort of unofficial adoption agency. She came across an ad placed by a 26-year-old 𝐼𝐸𝐬 Kirsten Jensen. She had given birth to a baby boy out of wedlock and wanted to have him adopted. On April 15, 1916, 𝐼𝐸𝐬 put her 3-week-old infant son, Harry, into Dagmar's care and gave her 12 crowns, which was the first month's maintenance fee that 𝐼𝐸𝐬 had received from the child's father. 𝐼𝐸𝐬 was supposed to give her 12 kroners or crowns every month, and Dagmar would take care of Harry. Dagmar agreed to these terms. As soon as the young mother left, Dagmar brought this 3-week-old infant in his pram for a walk and strangled him before dumping the body in a public toilet at a local cemetery. 3 days later, cleaners found the body of the strangled infant. It was to be the first, or at least the first known of many murders that Dagmar would commit. Dagmar would take the infants in, promise to look after them until such a time as she was able to place them with good, decent families. She accepted payment from mostly impoverished mothers who could not afford to have these children and take care for them themselves. But it was so expensive in itself to give Dagmar money to take care of their children until they could find suitable homes. But they gave all their pennies to Dagmar to take care of them until she could find suitable homes for them. But this was in vain, because shortly after she would take and receive these children, Dagmar would either strangle, drown, or burn the infant in a masonry heater. And it was by pure chance that the evil that this lady was doing was uncovered. In July in 1920, a young factory worker, Caroline Eigenson, placed a classified ad in a local newspaper seeking a family to adopt her newborn who had been born out of wedlock. It was a simple ad. The ad said, adoption parent wanted a little girl at 3 weeks, preferably a Christian home with lots of care and presence. Ticket number 234. Dagmar responded, and on August 30th, 1920, Carolyn brought her newborn baby girl, Sarah, to the first floor apartment in Copenhagen's Vesterbro district. Carolyn explained that her Christian parents were ashamed that the baby was born illegitimate, and the only solution available was for her to put the child up for adoption. Dagmar promised to find a good home for the child, explaining to the not yet convinced Caroline that she herself acted as an intermediary between unwanted children and adoptive families who kept the children. She kept the children for a week or so until she found just the right family. Eventually, Carolyn agreed. Seeing no other solution, she gave Dagmar the fee, left her child with Dagmar, and gave her the fee of 200 crowns. Now, the fee of 200 crowns was equivalent to a 1 year's wage for a woman in menial service in Denmark at that time. The following day, broken-hearted Caroline, she couldn't take it anymore. She, realizing, oh my gosh, I've made such a big mistake, she returned to Dagmar. She went back to go get her baby girl. She felt bad. She felt bad. So she went back to go get her daughter. She said she regret her situation. She regret her decision to leave her child with Dagmar. She really wanted her child back. But Dagmar was surprised to see Caroline. She was surprised to see the young woman, and she explained, I've already placed your child with a lady she met in the 𝐼़z𝐵, but she couldn't remember the address. She couldn't remember the exact address of the family. But you just got my child yesterday. She couldn't remember. 3 more times, Carolyn went back to Dagmar Overbye. 3 times, Dagmar told the distressed young woman that it was too late for regrets. The child was gone to another family. But Caroline would not take no for an answer. She went to police and she told them her story. Dagmar was not getting away with this one today. No. That very day, police went over to Dagmar's apartment and searched the property. They found the baby's clothes, and later they found remains of her bones and skull in the ashes of the stove. This is when the investigation into Denmark's worst serial killings began. Dagmar was immediately arrested. She confessed. She confessed to the deaths of 16 children, but the authorities could only recover the remains of 9 infants. So because of that, she was charged with 9 counts of murder. This was despite the fact that their investigations led them to believe that Dagmar had actually killed at least 25 children, including her own child. The case resulted in a national scandal. National scandal everywhere. Everybody was talking about it. What Overbye was actually doing, what Dagmar was actually doing, in essence, in providing this adoption agency, was illegal. But because at that time in Denmark, the state had made abortion a crime, so these unfortunate young women had little or no choice. They couldn't keep the children because they had to work, and so it cost them a whole year's salary to place them in adoption. Now, had Dagmar been providing a proper service, she would have been provided a much needed service for these women at that time. The society that denied these young women or whose children were born out of wedlock, or what they then called whore children, she would have been providing a really good service to allow for the children to be born, and if the parents couldn't support them, take care of them, if the mother couldn't take care of them, to have another family who's looking for a child to be able to have a child. Overbye was tried and convicted and sentenced to death. At her trial in March of 1921, investigators testified that they found in her apartment photographs, 20 children naked, children that she had taken the lives of. The reigning monarch at the time, Christian X, commuted her death sentence to life in prison. He added that an enlightened Denmark, we don't put our women to death. A little bit more time looking after the needs of the state's youngest citizens may have been a little more appropriate, but affected by prison psychosis, which is a dissociative disorder that affects inmates brought on by imprisonment, which includes hallucinations, delusions, and paranoia. Her condition in prison continued to worsen until Dagmar died in prison on May 6, 1929. She was 42 years old. This trial was one of the most talked about trials at that time. It was also noted as historic in the Danish history because it was a major focus. It plays a light on the child care legislation reform. And in 1923, as a direct result of the Dagmar Overbye case, the Danish government passed a new law dealing with the supervision of foster children and providing for the establishment of public mothers' homes for children born out of wedlock. It recognized that unwanted children were the responsibility of the government, but for the 25 innocent victims of Dagmar Overbye, it was a little too late. Thank you for watching this video. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one. We'll sage our space.